as you know, when you had your first gig in wrestling, you get your first check. It was what, $500, $1,000. You know, it's not enough to live, pay your bills.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And for me, my first check in mixed martial arts was $500 to show and $500 to win. It was at King in the Cage. That's $1,000. I think it was $250 to show, $250 to win. And for, you know, $500, that doesn't pay for anything.
No. You still got to pay your trainer. You got to
pay your trainer. You got to pay taxes.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, for me, the longest time in mixed martial arts, I worked 40 hours a week at a construction place called Karastar. And, you know, each time I'll get the call. Like, I remember getting a call to fight Kid Yamamoto at UFC 126 in 2011, February 5th. It was Super Bowl weekend. Big was fighting Vitor Belfort. They was like, hey, Demetrious Johnson, can you come fight Kid Yamamoto? And I was like, I'm at work right now. Can I call you back? Can I call you back?
I'm going to get fired.
I'm going to get fucking fired. Next thing you know, I go to my boss's office. I go, I say, hey, Pete, hey, amazing boss. I say, hey, Pete, I got this opportunity to go to Vegas and fight in a UFC. Can I get time off? And he goes, let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do. I said, okay, just let me know. And I'll go back to work, stacking. And see, this is the problem when I feel like athletes today, they don't have. Like for me, it was a passion. It was a side job. Mm-hmm. At the pit. Imagine that. Imagine you go back to your day, you get the call from Vince McMahon, Undertaker, I need you to throw Mankind off the steel cage, and you're like, I got to go back to work. I'll call you back when I have time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Could you imagine that? Like, so you have Dana White calling your coach or Sean Shelby calling your coach, like, I need Demetrious Johnson to come to the biggest organization in the world to fight a Super Bowl weekend in Las Vegas. And I said, I got to see if I get the time off from work. Anybody today's market, they're like, oh, fuck.
I'm there. Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Say less. And for me, it was like, I wanted security. I wanted, something that was going to give me a check every single week. And so my whole entire career up to the Demetrious fight, that's when I actually, stopped working. And then when I fought Ian McCall, I still wasn't full-time underneath my coach, Matt Hume. And then after that fight, after I went to a draw, he was like, even when I went on a diet, he was like, all right, you go do that diet. Let me know how it works out from you, right? And in knowing that I was going to, right? After that fight, he goes, so you're going to start taking this sport seriously, or you're going to just keep on off? I was like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm one of the best in the world. He goes, I have a question for you. When professional basketball players go to camp, do you think they just do their own ball, at the park? I said, no. He goes, okay. What about football players? Do you think they do the same? What about boxers? No. He goes, then why are you doing that? I was like, I don't know. And he goes, from now on, when you know what color your poop is. When you eat, I want to know what you eat. When you train, I'm watching you train. And then from that forth, you look at my first Ian McCall fight to my second, I come in, I'm way bigger, was sharp, was doing everything right. And everybody was like, what happened? I was like, oh, I started training.
Started training properly.
Started training properly. And then from there on in, that's when everything just took off in my career.
Wow, yeah. So how long because at the end of my career, I had a limited schedule, so I just basically did the really big events the last few years, like the WrestleManias.
Yep.
So obviously, when I worked all the time, like you stay in shape. Yep. And you're just in the grind and you're doing it. But at the end, like they would say, all right, hey, you want to do Mania? Yep. So I would back out, like figure I always needed I always took 16 weeks. Yep. What was your
for me? I've always been I think it's just like my wife says I'm crazy, but it's always been like for me that I've always wanted to be strong and fight, because you get the call on week's notice and it's like, oh, can you fight? And there's a couple times I've done short notice fights, and so for me, I've always wanted to be in a good keep good health. But now one of the things I've done to answer more to that, cater to that question, is that everybody talks about sparring. Right? Everybody's like sparring. And Max Holloway, a good friend of mine, he doesn't spar anymore. And for me, at the later stage of my career, I was like, what? I'm not going to spar anymore. There's no point in sparring and get hit in the head. And so I would go 9 months without sparring until they're like, hey, we have a fight for you. Does this fight, something that you're interested in? I'm like, yeah, I think so. Then I would start sparring 2 days a week. Back when I was an amateur, I was sparring maybe 3 or 4 days a week, where it was like, all right, we're doing Muay Thai sparring. Okay, we're doing boxing sparring. Okay, we're doing mixed martial arts sparring. I'll be more gung-ho to be susceptible to being okay with getting hit in the head with the sparring matches. Now, you ain't touching my head. I'm not sparring whatsoever. I just sparred recently for trying to help the next generation in my area.
Sure.
And I've been at such a high level where it's like, it's just a different level. And I was like, I'll give you a couple rounds, but you know, I move so much, I'm not gonna get hit in the head. Where now, I think the last time I sparred prior to that was like a year ago when I was getting ready for my title defense against Adriano, Colorado.
Wow.
Yeah. Because it's, you know, like you said, we get one body. And for me, after my last fight, Adriano, I've been part of a brain study for fighters. And I've been part of it since 2012, where the Cleveland Clinic, they want to get athletes in who do combat sports, and they want to see the lifespan of a brain, to see how it deteriorates or how it evolves over the course of the years of the athlete. So I've been doing it like every single year. Like I've done it 5 times between 2012 to 2023. And I did my test, and I'm like, they make you read, and they make you do a whole bunch of like memorization tests, and they're like, okay, before we start tests, we're gonna give you 5 words. I think it's apple, cow, house, moo, and milk. Just 5 words. And you say it 3 times. And then after that, you go through the whole entire study. He goes, hey, you remember those 5 words I told you? What are they? And you gotta repeat them. And I remember I would repeat them verbatim, just like apple, cow, blah, 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 blah. But after doing the whole testing from 2012 to 2023, and he looks at my brain scan, he goes, Demetrious, your brain has not aged 1 bit out of your whole entire career. And you've obviously gotten smarter. You read more you enunciate your words better than you did in 2012, which is supposed to happen, right? Like as you age, you're supposed to get more wisdom, more intelligent. And he goes, your brain hasn't changed 1 bit. Like,
oh, good for you, man.
You're lucky. Great, I've never been knocked out of my career. So right there, when he said that, and I was like, okay. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate that. So now
I don't need to spar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it, right? At 37, it's like, why put myself in that situation, right? And especially having 3 kids now and beautiful wife and trying to build bigger things I can do when I'm like 60, 70, 80 years old. It's like, I don't need to spar. So that's like, back to the context of the question, that's what I've kind of like cut back on it. It is a sparring. I like to stay in good shape because I still like to do jiu-jitsu on a daily basis, but now it's the sparring.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. And it sounds kind of like what they're doing. It sounds like our impact testing we do for our concussion protocol. It's called the impact test. And once you get concussed now, you know, you go into the system and you have to, the way you were describing the test sounds a lot like what we have to do. They'll give you an image or something like that, and then give you a bunch of questions, and they come back to it. And
it's smart. It's why not? Why not? Because I'm sure, just like in my sport, and I'm assuming in your sport, the biggest thing is the safety of the athlete.
Yeah. Right.
Like we want to make sure the athletes are being taken care of. And mixed and in the UFC and One Championship and all the other organizations in the world, athletes are the number one. Their health and the safety is our number one priority. But a lot of times it kind of gets swept under the rug, where the athletes don't take it upon themselves to get themselves tested. Or I still get blood work every 6 months to make sure I'm staying healthy. I still try to get EKGs. I still try to get my eyes done if I have problems, because I'm just so routine into that from all the years of me fighting. And so I just want to make sure I'm around for when my kids get older, so I can be able to help them out and be able to have conversations. And so it's a big thing for me.
Yeah, how long was it before you started taking that serious?
I'd say probably the mid 2000s. Like when I started feeling myself kind of starting to like not be able to stay out and then go out and still deliver at the top of my, then I was like, And
I mean, that's 14, 15 years of just being the Undertaker. So you're now 20 years into your career almost at that point.
Yeah. And then when I started changing my nutrition and working out. Like I would go through spurts where I would train, I'd get myself in phenomenal shape, and then I'd get in phenomenal shape, and then I would regress back and start drinking again at night and
Party hard.
Yeah. But by the mid 2000s, it was just like, no, man, you can't. Man, everything's starting to ache. So, all right, you can't be 330 pounds anymore. So that's when I started scaling it down until I kind of, okay, well, 295 to 305 is kind of where you need to be. And then
what are you now? Right now?
Right now, I'm probably 285 maybe.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So this year lately, I've kind of been fluctuating. I went way down, and then I was like, I don't, aesthetically, it doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean it doesn't matter for anything that I do professionally now, but it's still like
you want to feel good. You want to look good, baby.
Yeah, that's it. I just want to, I want to pop.
Just he looked at it like that's where he was like,
There's no camera back there.
No, I'm not going to do it to the camera. So what's he flexing that buggy whip for?
Buggy whip.
I've got arms like a buggy whip. But that's really good because there's nothing said. Like if you've seen somebody that's in the fight game, like a boxer that fought too long, and like Ali at the end,
yeah.
You got Parkinson's and all that.
Yeah.
Riddick Bowe was another one that took a lot of.
It's a lot of them, and the thing is, for me, we're talking off camera, and one of the things that like touched me, I always felt like I was different, meaning that I came from a background of work, right? Like, and there was no weight class for me, so you look in the infancy stage of the UFC because that was the biggest premiere in America, right? And the smallest weight class they had was 155. And I remember Sean Shirk. Nobody even talks about this guy, the Muscle Shark. Sean Shirk, he was the champion. And then they got rid of, before he became the champion, he was there. They got rid of that division because it wasn't popular. So the smallest division was 170. There was no way in hell I was going to weigh 170 pounds, out of college, I was like 122 pounds.
Right.
And so there was no opportunity for me to take this sport to where it is today. And then so when I jumped into mixed martial arts, it was a passion of mine and I worked full time. And then eventually, when I started fighting, my coach was like, oh, we can go, you can go to Japan, but there's just no money in Shuto, which is the
Shooter box.
The Shooter box, yeah. The Shooter box was the team in Brazil, but the Shuto was like the actual organization in Japan where you didn't make any money. And so for me, it was like I was just always different. And I told your co-host, I was like, I never fell in love with the lights. And there was an athlete who loved being called, like when he would go fight you, like he loved the lights. You love like, yeah, I'm the best in the world. And for me, I was like, I would never fall in love with that. Like I didn't want to make that my identity. And so when I was going through my mixed martial arts career, it was like I would show up, I would fight, and I'll go home, pressure wash the fence. I would show up and fight, go home and take the kids and change diapers and all that stuff. So I always had a separation between my work and then coming home.